Good day everyone. I am Arnold Davidrap Singh, Teacher 1 of Bienvenido R. Bulalakaw Memorial Elementary School, and I'll be reporting the Montessori method. But before we dig into my report, allow me first to introduce to you the person behind this pedagogy. So this is Maria Montessori, the woman behind this incredible pedagogy. So she was born on the 31st of August 1870 in the town of Chiaravalley, Italy. Her father, Alejandro, was an accountant in the civil service, and her mother, Rinaldi Steponi, I just don't know if this is how it pronounced, but I read it as Steponi. Well, she is well educated and had a passion for reading, which is actually very unusual for women Italian of that time. Then the Montessori family moved to Rome in 1875, and the following year Maria was enrolled in the local state school. And during that time, women are being discriminated, so there is gender inequality. So Maria at very young age, she wanted to break the conventional barrier. So she aspired to become engineer. But later on, when she graduated in secondary, she became determined to enter medical school and become a doctor. Despite her parents' encouragement to enter teaching, Maria wanted to study the male-dominated field of medicine. But it wasn't easy for her because she is a woman, so she initially being refused with the endorsement of Pope Leo XIII. But with her great effort and perseverance, eventually, she was given entry to the University of Rome in 1890, becoming one of the first women in the medical school in Italy. Despite facing many obstacles due to her gender, Maria qualified as a doctor in July 1896. So soon after, her medical career began. She was successfully make her way in this rigorous male-dominated field, which has actually required tremendous strength, dedication, and perseverance. But Maria became even known for her high level of competency in treating patients. Then, in 1897, Maria joined a research program at the psychiatric clinic of the University of Rome. So technically, Maria's early medical practice focused on psychiatry. She later developed an interest in education, attending classes on pedagogy and immersing herself in educational theory. Her study led her to observe and call into question the prevailing methods of teaching children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And she got the opportunity to improve this method when she was appointed as co-director of a new institution called the Orthophrenic School. Then the following year, she was married with her co-director Giuseppe Montesano, and then eventually had their child, Mario, in 1898. In 1901, Maria began her own studies of educational philosophy and anthropology, lecturing and teaching students. So from 1904 to 1908, she was a lecturer at the Pedagogic School of the University of Rome. And then there is a certain place in Rome, specifically San Lorenzo. This place is a poor city actually. So there are some children here that are being left alone when their parents work. So these kids, while their parents are not around, they run amok. They destroy some houses. In attempt to provide the children with activities during the day, of course to prevent the destruction of property, Maria was offered the opportunity to introduce her materials and practice to normal children. So In 1907, she opened the first Casa dei Bambini, or the Children's House. So this is a school, bringing some of the educational materials she had developed at the orthophrenic school. At first, of course, the children were unruly, but soon they showed great interest in working with puzzles, learning to prepare meals, and manipulating learning materials that Maria had designed. She observed how the children absorbed knowledge from their surroundings, essentially teaching themselves. Using scientific observation and experience gained from earlier work with young children, Maria designed learning materials and a classroom environment that fostered the children's natural desire to learn and provided freedom for them to choose their own materials. And soon after, the Montessori method began to attract the attention of prominent educators, journalists, and public figures. So by 1910, Montessori school could be found throughout Western Europe and were being established around the world, including United States. Then in 1929, mother and son established the Association Montessori International, or the EMI, to perpetuate her work. Unfortunately, during the Spanish Civil War, the Nazis had closed all the Montessori schools in Germany, including in Italy. So, to escape from the Civil War, in 1936, Maria and Mario traveled to England, then to Netherlands, where they stayed with the family of Ada Person. But Maria continued her passion. She actually had her 3 months lecture tour to India. Unfortunately, because of the outbreak of the war, that's 3 months turned to 7 years when Mario was being detained and Maria was put under house arrest. But it didn't stop Maria to continue her work. She even began the development of her approach to support the 6 to 12 child through cosmic education. So in her 70th birthday, she requested to free Mario, and it was granted. Then together, they trained over 1,000 Indian teachers. And when the war was over, in 1946 they returned to Europe. And the following year, she addressed UNESCO on the theme Education and Peace. Maria was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 3 consecutive years, 1949, 1950, and 1951. Her last public engagement was the 9th International Montessori Congress in London. Spending her final years in Amsterdam, she died peacefully in a French garden on May 6, 1952. And of course, her son, Mario, continued her legacy.
Se Dio vuole, tornerò in Europa.
Se i bambini sapessero chi è la Montessori, questo omaggio diventerebbe plebiscito. Il suo è un metodo di liberazione morale e mentale dell'infanzia. Alle piccole ali che si aprono, questa donna infonde il coraggio e la responsabilità di tentare il volo.
And now let's begin understanding the Montessori method of education. Again, this is based on Dr. Maria Montessori's scientific observation about how children learn as they progress from birth to adult. So, Montessori discovered that children avidly absorb information from their surroundings, and that if these surroundings provide opportunities for learning, the children would readily teach themselves. Over more than 50 years, Montessori perfected the teaching principles, key learnings, and educational materials that provided children with the optimal learning environment. Now let's move on to the key fundamental philosophy in Montessori. First is respect for the child. So in this philosophy, the unique developmental needs and interests of each child are respected. Children are not compared based on merit. They are valued for their individuality. Montessori education embraces multiple styles and pathways to learning and understand that each child's early learning journey is different. So kumbaga, they believe that each learners are individually unique. They have different pace of development or learning. They have different interest. Next is respecting the absorbent mind and the sensitive period. According to Montessori, child from birth to 6 years of age, they possess something called absorbent mind. For instance, when the kids are still little, around 0 to 3 years old, they learn to walk, they learn to feed themselves, they learn to talk. Even if we do not impose it to them, they learn it by themselves because they have this very absorbent mind. Though they observe it from us, because they are constantly learning in an inherent process of their everyday life. And in Montessori, they believe they have this absorbent mind because of what they so-called sensitive period. So in this period, children become ripe to learn different types of skills at a specific point in their development. The age of each learner's sensitive period, of course, varies from one child to another. So this sensitive period is where the child shows deep interest and deep concentration in learning. So it's very necessary not to be interrupted. Then we have the prepared environment. A major factor which set apart Montessori classroom is their physical organization. Montessori believed that classrooms should be filled with readily available and well-organized learning materials. The environment should be aesthetically pleasing and only include the things that the teacher wants the child to experience. The environment should contain materials that children from different ages, characteristics, and interests could all engage in. Then we have the role of the teacher. Montessori teachers have a quite different role than those teachers who use classic educational method. The teacher is less prominent. The teacher is only there to be an aid in the child's independent learning process. So the teacher decides which learning materials will be available and how they will be organized. Then the teacher takes a step back. She will just allow the learners to have a free exploration in the classroom, and she will just be give guidance and helping hands for those who need it. But teachers should be an active observer, assessing which children have reached sensitive period where new concept may be introduced. Alright, those are just some of the fundamental philosophy in Montessori. Now let's move on to the key principles in Montessori method. So we have 8 principles. So the first principle is movement and cognition. Montessori believed that without movement there cannot be any learning. So movement and learning are perpetually entwined in Montessori education. So this means kumbaga, a child has to move to be able to learn. Kasi just for example, you want to teach a child the proper hand washing. Child will easily learn it if you let the child move or experience proper hand washing, not just by showing a picture of hand washing while he was just sitting on his chair. And we do really learn better if we really involve our senses. So movement is absolutely essential. Life itself started with movement, right? So with movement there is a cognition. Okay, the next principle is choice. Children in Montessori classrooms freely choose their work. They arrive early in the morning, look around in the classroom, and decide what to do. They work on it for as long as they are inspired to. Then they put it away and select something else. This cycle continues all day. So they may choose to engage in learning by themselves, in peers, or in groups. So they really have their freedom. So they have this principle because it has been observed that learning and well-being improve if people have a sense of control over their lives. So if you give a children choices, let's just for example, choices of materials on the shelf, then children will just go and choose their own materials. What happened here is that if they are able to choose what they want, then they have this a sense of control over their learnings. So this sense of control give them or help them to improve their learning. Let's just say you control what materials they are going to pick. Then you are taking away their chance to develop a sense of control. And if he does not have that sense of control, he will not be likely to take ownership of what he is learning. Ika nga, life is based on choice. So children have to make their own decisions. They must decide and choose for themselves all the time. Let's move on to the third principle, which is interest. Montessori education is designed to awaken interest and to allow children to pursue learning about issues that are already personally interest them. Just like, for example, a child who is interested in skateboarding might be encouraged to learn about gravity through this interest. Because we know from a fact that if we are interested in something, we learn it better. Like, for example, you are interested in solving complicated numbers, then you might interested in math. Or if you love reading, then you might interested in literature. So same with the children. If they have this interest, then they will definitely going to learn it better. And the fourth principle is avoid extrinsic rewards. Why? Because research shows that children who are given rewards for learning are more likely to rush through a learning activity, less likely to return to that activity, and to have a shorter retention of the learning in which they engage than are children who are not given rewards for engaging in a learning activity. Okay, to understand it better, let's put it this way. If you give a children a reward, let's just say a sticker if they do a good job, or you put a star, it doesn't really help the kids because they are only being motivated by what they get from you. Rewards are really not necessary. Children are not looking for rewards to do something which they are interested in. Giving them rewards only will spoil their learnings. What really happens here if you give them a reward? Yes, they will get motivated, of course, but if you withdraw that reward, then the motivation will drop. So instead, develop a self-motivation, intrinsic motivation. Because self-motivation is a quality you want to build in child because it will carry on a long way in life. Furthermore, someone says, the prize and the punishment are incentives toward a natural or forced effort, and therefore, we certainly cannot speak of natural development of the child in connection with them. Okay, let's move on to fifth principle, which is peer interaction. In a Montessori school, children are placed in multi-age learning groups. Example of this is 3 to 6 or 6 to 9 years old, instead of being grouped by grades. Because enable children to teach to and learn from each other. Okay, they have this principle because they believe children work or learn better when they are in a collaborative environment. In this setup, young children will observe the older children and they will try to imitate or follow what they do. While older children have this opportunity to stand up as a leader and guide the little ones. Now moving on to the next principle, which is contextual learning. Okay, learning situated in a context is often deeper and richer than learning in abstract context. It is why the Montessori materials have concrete properties where Montessori developed both the isolation of difficulty and the isolation of quality. Okay, to understand this one, let's make a scenario. Like for example, you want to teach about insect, but you want your learners to explore more about insect. So instead of just learning abstractly with picture, take them to a meaningful context. Maybe take a walk and observe the insect in the garden, or under the tree, observe some ants. So in that way, they gain a more meaningful learning because children was able to observe the insects in their natural environment. Then try to talk about it in your classroom. Ask the kids what they have observed, or you try to bring nature table. So learning will become much richer and deeper. Moving on to the seventh principle, which is the adult interaction. Okay, in this principle, it says that interaction between children and teacher in the learning environment should be neither too much nor too little. It must be just right. So that means Montessori teachers are well trained for this approach. They are trained as to what language they are going to use in dealing with a child, as to when is the right time to interact with a child. They really allow a child to struggle with a project or a problem long enough to learn from it, but not too long that they become frustrated by it. So there is really specific ways that a teacher may interact with a child, because right interaction will bring more positive outcomes from the children. Okay, moving on to the last principle, which is order in the environment. A Montessori classroom is a calm and orderly place. Actually, if you walk into a Montessori classroom, you will observe that there is a complete order in the environment. You will see there is a different areas. In each areas, every materials got a place. Even at the end of the day, once the children are done with the materials, it goes back into place. They have respect for the environment. Because if you encourage the child to maintain this order or to respect the environment, the child will also be able to have a certain order with the things that he learned in his mind. Okay, and that's all the 8 principles in Montessori method. Hope this report helped you a lot in understanding the Montessori method. Thank you for listening. Okay, bonus trivia. I'll be showing to you some of the known personalities who went in Montessori school.